Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this exclusive video interview. Today, we have with us Mr. Suresh B R, Senior Vice President and Country Head Human Resources for Bosch India. Welcome, Mr. Suresh.
Hi, Abid. Thank you for having me on board.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining in. For our viewers in this interaction, we'll touch upon a very few important points, important topics that is, impacting the workforce, why skilling is more important than ever, and what Mr. Suresh has learned over the years and what were his biggest learning during this crisis. So, Mr. Suresh, I'll not hold you for long and I'll start shooting my questions. So, my first question to you is, as a people leader in the unprecedented times that you faced, what were your biggest worry and learnings?
Some of it might be pretty obvious, but I'll still state the obvious. Of course, when the whole thing happened, it was an extreme surprise. Nobody was completely prepared. So the first part was about taking care of employees, both their physical well-being in terms of the unknown risks due to something like a pandemic, educating them to the extent that we were also learning on what are some do's and don'ts for them and their family to stay healthy. And also somewhere keeping in mind that it's a completely different situation which nobody has faced, and hence keeping far more connected in terms of understanding what's happening in their lives, more than which you would have normally had they been in front of you when they were coming into office. So I'd say communication, connect, health and well-being, focused on health and well-being were the first part, which really was the focus for all of us. I must say in Bosch, I really am not trying to advertise. So one, we are very good at crisis management in general. I don't know whether it's a core competence or something that we have done. At least our customers have told us that if something goes wrong, normally it doesn't, whether it's quality or delivery or whatever, you guys get your act together very fast compared to others. That happens through fantastic collaboration. So we had a crisis management team practically in no time, which set us up and running, first taking care of employees' health and well-being. And if I take our software entity with 22,000 people, which delivers engineering service to the rest of the Bosch world, within 1 week, it was flowing seamlessly. So nothing stopped, everything ran. The factory stopped, the rest did. So summarized, I'd say employee safety, health and well-being was foremost concern, where we were learning, but we were also connecting extensively at different levels of the organization with our employees to calm things down and say we're all in it together and we'll get through this without knowing what get through means. And second is as soon as possible, get back in terms of learning to work from home to the extent that it was required, and we could do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting about the crisis management part. And during this pandemic, there was one more new thing that people were shy about learning, but now they opened up and they, not only the companies, but also the employees.
Right.
I would just like to ask one more thing. What are some of the actions that Bosch took to redesign the learning strategy, and what has been the impact so far?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say the pandemic really started a learning strategy. It caused some shifts in the learning strategy. In reality, after the initial 2-3 months where there was a slowdown, where focus was largely on employee safety, health and well-being and business continuity, then it actually accelerated. And this was due to 2 or 3 triggers. Number one, being largely in the mobility space or the automotive space, the industry where we have a dominant presence, which was going through a kind of slowdown in 2019, and then getting hit with this uncertain crisis. There was a feeling of insecurity and time on your hands. So this helped in accelerating the pull that we were trying to create from employees wanting to upskill or reskill themselves. Time on hands and a certain sense of insecurity helped in accelerating the learner or the employee taking learning as his or her agenda. So that's one positive point where it was not directive, but it was more a pull-driven initiative. The second one was, while technology was always available for e-learning, distance learning, whatever it is you want to call it, there was not sufficient amount of traction. Now, thanks to the entire mode of communication and working shifting to use of these technologies, where your laptop became your primary companion through the day, it also accelerated the use of e-learning and technology as an enabler to connect with the first point where there was a pull, there was capability which was existing. So these were two things that happened. The third one was we had to relook at the different programs that we've had and look at it from a relevance point of view, saying both from a content as well as a medium, what is relevant. And that has caused certain shifts where more than 50% of the programs that we were traditionally running as, let's say, in presence or classroom training have shifted to e-learning. Yeah? It doesn't mean that the face-to-face connect goes away. In fact, there are some where you need far more of that connect in a safe manner. And in fact, one last thing on this point is that we had started building a Bosch Learning Campus. It's a 5-acre lovely campus around 1 kilometer behind IIM Bangalore. And this campus, we actually accelerated as soon as it was safe to restart the construction. And this is really a wonderful campus, which is like a Gurukul, where the ambience itself helps you create that collaborative spirit, which also fosters learning of a certain kind. So collaboration, innovation, wherever that was required, physical campus, where it's safe to do this, and a much more accelerated use of technology and hybrid ways of learning and accelerated e-learning are some shifts that have happened in the meanwhile. So I wouldn't call it that it was a strategy where we shifted from A to B. It just evolved and COVID accelerated it in a positive direction.
Okay, if I can take a liberty of asking, what new you have learned in last 1 year, like professionally or personally, anything?
One part is coming from a generation where I use digital tools, but not to the extent that I need to. So Digital Fluency is the program that we rolled out for all of us. 4,500 of us, starting from the MD downwards. So I had the same accountability as much as any other employee in ensuring that I reached a minimum level. Because when we first did an assessment, I was only happy. All our scores were low. I was only happy that among my peers, it was slightly higher. So some vicarious pressure, but as CHRO, there was a clear need. So digital fluency is one part which I've taken on. Second, there are a lot of youngsters who are far better than me. I mean, at home, it's my daughter who teaches me how to use my mobile better. But I just happened to meet one of our high pots during an interview who's into AI, ML. And I'm not into learning always in the classical mode on an e-learning module. My learning is more with experience, with connecting with people, having conversation, reading some things, watching some videos. So this guy is my mentor. I wouldn't even call him my reverse mentor because he knows far more than me. Probably I'll gain more from him than he does. He's well known in AI, ML, and the new technologies. And he gives me a perspective which helps me understand that world enough for me to say, how do I help as HR others in the organization scale up differentially in order to be relevant for our businesses? So that's one more example of what I get into. Apart from that, some amount of soft skilling we went through as leadership through, all virtual, on how do we engage in terms of a much stronger collaboration, especially with switching over to a virtual mode. So these are things which naturally had to be done. So I wouldn't call it exactly as a new skill.
Okay, so since you mentioned about new skill and what learning programs you went through and your team peers as well. So do you think like how important is it to measure ROI in learning and development? Is it important? What do you think?
I would say it's important, but it shouldn't become the overriding concern. The culture of the organization first needs to have the belief that there is a need for learning. It needs to care enough about the experience of employees and employee experiences where naturally there is a hunger to learn. I mean, from the time we are children, it is there. It's just a question of providing the right kind of environment. And if that is provided, you have to have trust in people to say they learn what is useful and not learn something just for the heck of learning it. So those should become the dominant factors. And luckily, I'd say I have a leadership team, my colleagues demand more from me as CHRO and hence in charge of learning to say there is a huge pull for learning and upskilling in these uncertain times. What more can we provide? And what is it that we can do to help you? So that's a positive environment, but a ROI is required that somewhere down the line, there needs to be a certain connect with business. For us, we are going more in the direction of doing a very clear analysis for each business segment as to what is changing in business, partly due to COVID, but even otherwise due to technology, and what are critical skills or competencies which make a difference to the business in a competitive field, and what are skills which are required across the board for everyone to scale up. So some of these could lead to enhanced productivity efficiency, which can be a lead indicator of ROI. Some of these can be that you enable with these skills to get into a new business field, a platform business, which you would have otherwise not got into as a traditional component supplier. So summary, I'd say ROI need not necessarily only be in terms of classical terms of saying IRR and payback period for my learning program. Perhaps yes, for some programs. But largely looking at these kind of lead indicators to say, where do I need my skills to move up? How many have moved up through assessments? What is the employee experience that we are providing? Do they feel relevant? Do they feel trusted? So these indicators are as important when we speak about ROI as a classical, let us say, economic ROI.
Thank you so much. Now I'll move on from learning, and I'll quote one article that you wrote, I think in April 2018. You mentioned a lot about gig economy and VUCA world. So given the current scenario, hybrid work is the new business normal, and it is here to stay. That's what we are hearing. That's the research suggests. How difficult will it be to build a strong culture, during this hybrid workforce and remote working? What do you think?
I'll split that into two. I'll largely speak about hybrid working, a little bit of mention on gig. The hybrid is here to stay, as you mentioned. All of us are in a learning mode, and the learning has been relatively positive. So some things which have been positive is that there has been an enhanced connect between the manager and the employee, or between employee and employee, thanks to the inherent need to connect with people, which used to be there in a physical space. There is a certain extra effort and time now being put in a somewhat regulated manner by many of the managers to ensure that this connect stays. So as long as people knew each other, the efficiency has remained the same or even marginally increased in terms of working and delivering. The big challenge comes in when new employees come in where they do not have the chance to meet their colleagues in person, have those informal coffee conversations, going to lunch together. So this is a part where we are still learning. I can't say that we have a perfect solution. This is the part where we'll have to engage a lot more as leaders, as CHROs, which can be by engaging with this workforce to understand what are they feeling, what are they sensing, where are they lacking, and what can we do with a more sensible hybrid balance where in a safe mode, we bring more of them into physical spaces, even physically distributed spaces and not one space, that we enable this connect. And once the connect is there, then it can go back into an efficient transactional way of working. So ultimately, what we have realized is HR can provide a framework, and the frameworks now need to go with trust. So I've seen this shift where earlier, even from a point of view of attendance, time clocking, it used to be very strictly regulated by the policies. Now we have made it a very loose framework where the entire thing is between the manager and the employee. And as long as the manager and the employee feel that it's clear what needs to be done and the results are being delivered, HR becomes a facilitator. So these are some changes that we are also learning and implementing, but it's actually a very positive change where it's going in the direction of the way we need to engage with employees with more trust, where the employee naturally will take more ownership and hence deliver better. We just need to bridge that gap where new employees or somebody taking on a new role, you need to go that extra mile through different ways to make sure that they settle down and understand the culture and the environment in which they're working in. And this is work in progress.
Yeah, that's work in progress. That very rightly pointed out. We are running short of time, so I'll only put my last question. I'll shoot my last question. We have seen the worst, and especially the manufacturing industry, and we have sailed through it. But bouncing back is a very tough job, and especially for the manufacturing industry, as I mentioned. So, at the current moment, what are your top 3 priorities at this moment as a people leader?
So I'll take the context of a manufacturing industry. It could be slightly different if I take our engineering and software sector. So I'll stay with the main course of manufacturing industry. There is a continued, COVID has not gone away, and we can't, and the vaccination has just started. So the first thing I'd say is continued focus on health and well-being of employees, both physical and mental, still is priority 1, priority A. In fact, we've had to let's say, rejig ourselves and even put some of those things we put in at the start of the COVID phase, just to ensure that we don't relax and put our employees or their families in some kind of unsafe situation coming from outside or coming from the factory. The second one is the part that I already spoke about, that understanding what impact has changed due to COVID and change in technology, where certain businesses have changed significantly. What does it mean in terms of reskilling and upskilling of the employees is a part which is focus number 2, which again connects with the L&D that we spoke about. The third part is not to lose, while we are taking care of the present, not to really lose sight of the future, where renewed focus on talent, where certain skills, due to a much higher level of volatility that we've now got used to, where adaptability, resilience have become far more critical, and hence focus on a robust talent strategy, considering a lot more of uncertainty in the future, that any kind of a situation can be managed, are 3 things that I would put as top 3 CHRO priorities. So first, health and well-being of employees and continued focus on employee experiences. I dovetailed this together, while employee experiences need to go up in multiple ways. The second one is reskilling, upskilling, that the way the business needs it and the changing needs of business. And third is rejigging the talent strategy for the future would be 3 priorities I put. I'd say the gig that you spoke about is there as a possibility, but I can't say in the past 1 year it has significantly changed the way we use the gig economy. It's coming much more into our talent strategy now as a point of discussion, but it hasn't changed any ratios where we say if it was 90-10 earlier, it's not gone to 60-40 or something like that. But it's become a very relevant point to discuss about when we're talking about talent strategy for the future.
I think it's how you have pointed out 3 things that is important, but I think all 3 are important. Either you talk about employee experience, either you talk about upskilling, reskilling. So I think it's very difficult to choose, but these are the 3 things that I think you will follow, and there are many HR leaders they also follow. Thank you so much, Mr. Suresh, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. And thanks a lot once again for joining us.
Abid, thank you and ET for having me on board. It was a pleasure.